Good evening. How are you doing this evening? Great. All right. Are you ready and open to listening to how these four ladies have made an impact in their careers, and they can teach you a little bit of something about recruiting and how to move yourself forward when you are looking for roles. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. I know I have your bio, but I feel like if I read your entire bio, they would probably sleep by then. But I think they'll be more enthusiastic to hear you talk about who you are and where you're from. We'll start with you, Natalie.
Hello, I'm Natalie Signorelli. I work at the Police Credit Union of California here in the Bay Area. You want to go into role? And all right. So I am currently the VP of Talent Organization Development, which is just a nice way to say VP of HR. And I've been recruiting primary function, started in 2007. That's how I got into the HR role, and was actively recruiting up until until I got my promotion to VP in March of this year. I love recruiting. It's one of the best parts of HR and how I fell in love with HR. So I'm really excited to share with you everything that I know. And
Good evening. My name is Yvonne Martinez Figueroa, and I've been in recruiting since 1996. Kind of fell into it. I did an internship, which I think internships are a great opportunity to get in front of people and to network with them. And then I branched out and I just learned recruitment and I fell in love with it. Part of it is working with people. And the further you go into your career, you really get involved with people and their life. They're making decisions. You're impacting someone's life. So you really get to be a part of that. I currently work for a real estate investment firm here in San Francisco. It's not only an investment firm, but we work in many different verticals within the company. So I get the opportunity to work with investments and real estate and property and construction. And so I love what I do, and I am glad and honored to be here.
Hello everyone, my name is Placida Delgado, and I work for Stanford Healthcare. So there's Stanford University and there's the hospital. So I'm on the hospital side. I'm a part of the Human Resources group. Specifically, I'm a senior talent acquisition consultant, which means I have a HR business partner sort of function, but primarily I recruit for clinical operations, so all of the clinical laboratories, reference laboratories. I also recruit for the pharmacy group, so the residency program, and the pharmacist for the hospitals. And I also recruit for the imaging teams, so all of the imaging positions for the hospital as well. I've been in recruitment, I've been in HR and recruitment since 2000. And I started off as a sourcer. If most of you know that term, it's still called a sourcer, right? Mm-hmm. So I started off as a sourcer, just really from the back end. And at that time in recruitment, it was called full life cycle. So I come from a full life cycle foundation, both front and back, and then stepped out outside of that, client facing, and I've been working in professional services, healthcare primarily, though, worked for UCSF as well. And I think I can mimic some of the things that I've heard thus far. One of the wonderful things about being on, first of all, HR is not always a happy place, because we definitely we enforce process, policy, and procedure. But what makes it a happy place for me is impacting the people that I interact with, whether it be coaching the managers to make decisions that are across the board and best fit. And I also believe in really working with candidates on what I call their professional portfolio, because not everything is a black and white job description for me. And I think I get the head nod of others. You know, it means so much more when you're impacting individuals' careers, and I've been on that side as well. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm excited. GGU is my alum. I'm on 2011. I finished the program here. I'm really, really excited to be here with you all and with my panel of of professionals whom I hope to learn some stuff from too, because we're always in a learning mode. Okay.
Good. Awesome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Remy Mustafa, and I'm Director of HR Business Partner at LinkedIn. And for all those who may not know what LinkedIn is a platform, and our mission is to essentially create economic opportunity for the global workforce. So this conversation is awesome to be a part of it and to be able to kind of impart information about what our products provide, and also use it as an opportunity to kind of share my personal journey in technology. A little bit about myself, I've been at LinkedIn about 2 years, and prior to that I was with Microsoft Corporation supporting various different businesses, our search business, our social business, so on and so forth. And I was there for about 4 years, and prior to that I was at Amazon and I was supporting our risk business, and prior to that, just dropping names now, right? Seriously, and prior to that I had the good fortune to obviously, I've had the good fortune to have an extensive technology career. Prior to that I was at Google as well for a little over 5.5 years. I know, I don't make this stuff up. I think that I have the good fortune to talk about technology and really having grown in the tech environment as a people experience leader, I call myself. And so I'm really thrilled tonight to be able to share those, some of my learnings, but also get learnings from you, because I think for me, that's how I have grown, is really being open to learning, being open to receiving a lot of new ideas from different places. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you, but also looking forward to receiving back.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. Let's all give a round of applause for that. Thank you all for sharing. One of the things you guys talked about now, you had a range. You talked about recruiting since from 1996, and then some years, and Placida, you talked about recruiting since 2000. What has been your experience with recruiting, and how has it changed from then till now? And we could start off here as well.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. I remember it was a very manual process when I started. Software has helped quite a bit, and then even just the trends with it being an employer's market to being an employee's market. Job market's very, very tight right now. I remember recruiting in the recession, and everyone was just throwing their resumes out, and it was easy to get a lot of good candidates. Now it's a little bit hard, but I would definitely say that the technology has made our lives a little easier, and especially a little bit of that artificial intelligence, and being able to weed out by using words and years of experience. So for me, it has changed, quite a bit, and as the technological advancements have definitely helped along the way, and then having LinkedIn and help source candidates has been great.
I'm going to just stay on this question a little bit, because you mentioned keywords, and uses the keywords search that we use as recruiters to kind of weed out. And what can you give the audience that will help them be weeded in?
Right.
We want to know that, right?
Right. So I think what's really important is it's very common for people who are looking for jobs just to do one blanket resume. And I think it's really important that when you're looking at the ads, whether it's via Craigslist or LinkedIn, that the company is going to use key terms that is important to them, and use that on your resume. So always tweak your resume just a little bit to the organization that you're applying for. I know it's hard, because you're applying to a lot, but if you can try to personalize it to that specific organization, I think that's how you'll get weeded in, and because we are looking at keywords, and so I think if you can put that on your resume and just little minor tweaks here and there, it would be a huge benefit to all of you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go with that same question from the top, which was what was your experience with hiring people? So we can do that.
So starting early on.
Yes.
I think it was a very manual process. I remember faxing resumes and receiving resumes. It was a very different time. What I will say is that's really helped me now that the market is not it's a candidates market. That we cannot find enough qualified candidates to fill the positions that we have. And so that does help me. So kind of leveraging that old school sourcing, calling people, utilizing networking as a tool, and then also like LinkedIn and other platforms that we do use where we are able to not only weed in, but like on a LinkedIn, you can put the industries, you can put specific skills, and as talent acquisition, we do rely on that. So we're using that in addition to many years of experience, and then also kind of manual techniques along with the advanced technologies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Placida, you want to chime in on that one as well?
I would, again, agree that the tools have changed quite a bit. I will also add that the candidate marketplace has changed. So the need to screen and the level of screening and the behavioral interview techniques now versus then are different. The expectations of the candidates are different. So the offerings and what that then requires for the organization to then offer the candidates in return in order to bring people specifically for Stanford. Unfortunately, we are not as tech savvy as most organizations. Healthcare is pretty bureaucratic. Healthcare is a little behind the times. Okay, so and so we're just getting our LinkedIn seats. We're just moving over to Workday. Our tools are homegrown and tailored to fit the organization. So our process is still very cumbersome. We still do call lists. We still do advertisements. We still do a lot of networking events, and we go to job fairs, and we still do those things. So it still is very old school, and we're trying to move. And I've worked for Kaiser, and I've worked. I can name drop. I've worked for Kaiser in the past. I've worked for UCSF as well, and it is just indicative of the healthcare space. Okay, so the process then was more or less you could really touch and feel the candidates. You had a lot of one-on-one contact. People could call you on the phone. Now, not so much. So I think that's the biggest difference from 2000 to now is you have many more tools. You have a different client expectation or candidate expectation. So it causes you as the employer to have to step to the plate. And you have to dig a little bit deeper because retention is an issue for us. The churning over of candidates. The staying power of an applicant. And so that then requires me to ask different questions and dig a little bit deeper other than the standard, where do you see yourself in 5 years, which I won't jump ahead. That's a pet peeve of mine. But I'll stop there.
Remy, would you like to chime in as well on this?
Yeah, so I think maybe I'll add a few points. I think what all three of these ladies mentioned is that the world is shifting now to what I call a bilateral relationship, meaning that with platforms like LinkedIn and many others, right, it gives the candidate an opportunity to really showcase who they are to many companies, right, versus just to one. Right, so there's an opportunity to really give the candidate an upper hand in really showcasing their talent. So it's an opportunity for recruiters to reach out to you and you to reach out to recruiters directly. So that makes the experience, I think, really pleasant for both. So I think that's the good news for all of you. I think in terms of like your profile, it's really important, again, what tools like social platform or professional platforms allow you to do is not only highlight your skills, but also you could use it as an opportunity to showcase other talents, right? Like feeds or posts or things that you're connected to, those are all things that you can be, not only showcase what you're seeking and what skill you're doing, you can also showcase another area that really talks about your interest in terms of technology. So for example, let me just take a quick pause or pulse. Signify how many folks are in science, technology, engineering, or math, and how many folks are in business or something, or perfect. So whether it's in the science and technology or whatnot, right? Let's say you use GitHub, for example, right? You could go on a platform like LinkedIn and link your GitHub profile or anything that you're doing or your site, so on. So companies could come to you, or you could go to them. In business, same thing. Not only could you be looking for a job, but also you could have a business account as well, where you're a seller, right? So you could use a lot of platform to kind of not only be a student or a job seeker, but you could also be an entrepreneur as well and be able to showcase those talents. And I think that's what the social environment really allows today versus before.
Absolutely, definitely allows opportunities, and I'll just chime in a little bit. My background being in HR and recruiting as well, so there's so much opportunity to kind of sell yourself to the employers, but then also at the same time see what they're doing. And so employers on our side, being that I'm on the employer side, the management side, we're always trying to find ways for people to be interested in who we are and be interested in what we are doing, so you want to work for us.
Exactly.
So thank you for chiming into that. You all talked about, I think, at least 3 of you guys chimed in and talked about networking. And that's great because that segues right into our next section. Because I think it's important for us all to get out there and network. I actually had someone in the audience, thank you very much, asking me about networking as well. What's the best way, what is your ideal of the best way to network with people to get the word out about job seeking or career changing? Natalie,
Okay. I guess we'll start. So I'm sorry. What was the question again?
It's about job seeking, so networking. What's the best way to get out there and network?
Sure. So I think anytime that there is an opportunity, like here, this is a great time to network. Anytime there's, if an organization has a social event, definitely get out there to network. Any committees or volunteer community events, it's always a great way to network. And then when you are networking, it's just really important, that you introduce yourself, you're enthusiastic, you get to know a little bit more about the company, research a little bit, ask some questions, but definitely be genuine in your approach. So I definitely think any community events or events that organizations put on, definitely go to that.
Definitely agree with that. I think with technology, I think people have scaled back on that networking, or they don't have the experience, and so it can be very intimidating. My company, we use a lot of the text platforms now, and so there are times that your communication is very limited. So when you are able to take on networking events, I always say just make sure you're confident. It's okay that you don't have all of the experience, you don't have all of the answers, or you don't. This is that first opportunity. But if you continue to talk to people and listen as you're talking, kind of understand what they do and how the two of you might be able to network together. If you're interning, if you're at school, every time you're talking to someone, it's a networking event. All the time. Even if you're, for me, we have a full maintenance department. I work for an investment company, and there are times that I have gone somewhere and they've just given us great customer service, and I say to them, hey, that was really great. Are you interested? And people are really surprised by that, and they're thrown off by that, but you have to constantly network with people, and it could be a friend, it could be a stranger, it could be someone in the elevator, and it doesn't mean be aggressively, hi, my name is so-and-so, and this is my major, but as you're talking to people and you're interacting, I think it's a great opportunity. If you meet somebody and they're in HR and you're studying HR, if you're listening to them, we love to talk about ourselves. Recruiters will tell you anything. But in general, people do like to talk about themselves and they like to engage. And so when you do hear that, I think it's a great, very simple way to network. also, we had a group of interns. We launched an intern program this year with my company, and the interns were so nervous. Like, I kept coaching them, and one thing that none of them did, I waited for them to do that, was to get on LinkedIn and to connect. And I said to them, connect with everyone here at the company. And just continue. And we actually were able to place one of the interns in Southern California, and she was the one that took that initiative and introduced herself to the president of Southern California on LinkedIn. And so you have to be willing to take a risk as well. So I would just say keep an open mind, ask the questions. If it just doesn't feel right, then, pull back. But if you are talking to someone and they're sharing, it's okay to ask, hey, tell me a little bit more about that.
Just real quick, I want to jump in there because you talked about connecting. What's the best way and approach to approach someone, like especially as a president of a company?
Right.
What's your advice on the best way to connect?
I would say my own personal preference, and this would be shooting ahead to some of my peeves, is just don't get on there and start randomly sending emails. What I find with our executives, they participate in a lot of alumni events, their alma maters, and they meet people. And so we've had candidates that they've just graduated, they started that initial handshake. Hello, my name is Yvonne Martinez Figueroa. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. CFO. And they actually sent a request, and the CFO kicked it back to me and said, I want to schedule an interview with this person. But you have to be very careful about that. You don't want to do the randoms where you're contacting everyone, or you start with one person and then now we all sit in the same area in the department and everyone's got the same invitation to connect. Mm-hmm. So I think you really have to be mindful as you're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Placida, did you want to chime in on networking?
Networking. So I really enjoy anytime there is an event that I'm attending on behalf of Stanford, a hiring event. Oftentimes I've been impressed by those who have reached out to me first prior to the event, and so that and then I'm on the lookout for them once I get to the event. I think something it's a soft introduction, as you mentioned, through LinkedIn. You like the clumsy. I know. I feel so honored to be right next to you. But truly, if you there's ways, I'm sure everyone here knows how to use LinkedIn. You set up your templates, etc. But if you do your research prior to going to an event, and go to an event with a purpose and some sort of focus, so that you don't find yourself coming up to somebody and saying, can I give you my resume? What kind of jobs do you have? Will you hire me? That's a no-no. Only because that's something that we get every single day. The idea is to differentiate yourself and step out amongst the masses, which is difficult. So don't get yourself too wound up in that, but just be prepared when you go there. Know who's going to be there, right? And just have some, just basic questions. Can I connect with you on LinkedIn even? Is a good introduction. Hi, I saw that you were on panel, or I saw that you guys were going to be here today. Was really excited to see you. Do you mind if I connect with you on LinkedIn? You need to ask permission. Because everybody has to be respectful of everyone else's time. All recruiters feel that way. We get tons of phone calls, emails, resumes. We still have fax machine resumes. So
we do too.
But go to the events prepared. Go to the events, lighthearted, in a good mood. You're there to make friends. Make it a conversation. It need not be an interview. If it turns into an interview on the spot, be ready to whip out your resume, or be ready to, hand over the flash drive, whatever it is. Be ready for that, but don't lead with that. Lead with the genuine interest of wanting to know the person who's managing and driving the process that you need to navigate through to get to the other end, which is the hiring manager, and make an impression on them. And then it's your responsibility. At that point, once we get you in front of the hiring manager or whomever the decision maker is, it's your turn to execute then. Then you can be as aggressive as you want, because they really enjoy that. Now, in terms of reaching out to the leaders of Stanford, reaching out to the leaders of most healthcare organizations, most leaders don't have a lot of time to read. So, quick bullets, 2 sentences at best. hi, I plan on coming to this event. Your organization is going to be there. If you happen to be on board, I would love to meet you. Can we connect? Or would it be, again, always asking permission and just being direct with a couple short sentences is best.
To just build on that point, I think in terms of networking, relationships really matter. And I think she shared something really powerful, which is authenticity. That's also really important. This actress, her name is Issa Rae, she actually made a recent comment that really, stuck with me, which was use your immediate network. Don't be afraid of your immediate network, right? Like, yes, we're speaking on this panel today. I don't necessarily feel like I'm the person you need to connect with. I think you need to connect with each other, right? You're in the same classrooms. You're in the same programs. You're all gonna leave to do really great things, right? So it's build relationships with each other. And the person next to you that you know deeply is normally the person that can connect you to another connection. I think that sometimes folks always feel like, hey, I need to be connected to the executive da-da-da, right? The CEO da-da-da-da-da. Not necessarily, and probably not, right? The person who you know or who remembers you from is the connection that will get you to your next gig. And I would say for me personally, I'm not a recruiter, but in my own career journey, that actually has been what has helped me, right? Yes, there have been the technologies, which I've appreciated, and the technologies have allowed me to remain in touch with people and be connected with people. But also a lot of the people that have connected me to other things, they've had relationships with me. I've done stuff with them, and they're like, I remember you. You're looking? Yeah, okay, so that's why I don't believe it's necessarily us. It's all of you together and the relationships you have with each other.
Okay, thank you. So what we have here, first impressions, we talked about interviewing, first impressions are everything.
Yeah.
And I could have leave with the question of, what do you think about first impressions? But we know, they are everything.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on first impressions, and what are you looking for when someone comes to you in an interview?
So, as you said, I think whether it's human nature or not, I think you can make a decision on someone in the first 3 seconds of when you're meeting them. I look for someone who is engaged, when I'm actually going down and seeing them, and then if they're kind of on their phone or not looking, to me that seems maybe they're disengaged. If I see that they actually have a pamphlet or products and services, being a financial institution, we have that, that kind of, I'm like, oh, that's good. Someone who, seems friendly and outgoing is probably one of the first things that we're always looking at. And I always like to ask, actually, our receptionist her first impressions as well, because usually that's how you can really tell when if someone's on and they think no one's watching. That's how you can really tell if it's a good person or not. How were they to the receptionist? Were they rude? Were they respectful? So I always like to get their take, how was that? And because sometimes people are very rude, and that's definitely not someone that we want in the company. But someone who's engaged and just within the process is something that we always look at. So.
Yvonne, I'll ask the question. It's a different question, but I'll ask you a question. How do you like candidates to follow up with you after an interview?
Email.
Email.
And I will typically, I'm very, through the candidate process, I'm very involved with the candidate. And I always ask them, and I give them a timeline. And it's because in my position, I don't come from a large organization. We have about 200 employees, and I am part of the people and culture team, but I specifically work in talent acquisition. So I schedule almost every outgoing call. And so when I will ask someone, if we haven't connected by Thursday, give me a call in the afternoon, or email me in the afternoon. And a lot of times what will happen is they're so excited and they want to come across as eager, and they're calling and calling and calling. And with technology, if I'm on a call, it's showing John Smith is calling, John Smith is calling, John. And I think it's great that they're eager, but then it leads me to think, are they following directions? And that goes back to that first impression. How, if I explain, I'm actually going to be off-site, I'm not going to be available, but please email me and I will follow up with you. And I'll even get back to you quicker. Like, if you really want a response from me, because I am moving all around and I'm not always at my desk, it is a lot easier for me to communicate that way. So I do prefer that. Now, as we move further in a process, and we're now scheduling interviews and we're talking about potential offers, or we're going into salary negotiations, those are when we'll really need to be on the phone. Those aren't things that we want to have in an email or even a text discussion. And so typically when that happens, I'm very clear about that too, just so that I can set the expectation. And you don't want the candidate's experience to be bad, because you might be the perfect candidate, and you also should be looking at us.
Yeah.
What was your first impression of us as a company? Because if we treated you poorly up until the point to where now we want to make the offer, you want to think about those things, because this is your career and you're going to be making a commitment. So it goes both ways, that we want to set expectations with one another. So email does work well for me.
Can I chime in on that really
You may.
quickly?
Yes.
I think, as Yvonne said, especially in this market, I mean, you are interviewing us as much as we're interviewing you. So I think it's really important to remember that. Not to settle if there's something that just doesn't feel right, because most likely it might not be a good fit. But you're very much, interviewing us, and we're aware of that. I think any good recruiter is aware of that. So we will follow through. We will make sure that your experience is incredible, because it's also our brand on the line too. Because you will all say, "Gosh, that recruiting experience was terrible, and don't work there." And so we're very well aware of that. So sorry.
That's good. Lashida, I have another one for you. Okay. What are, in a few words, what are some of the pet peeves? Interview process and on the candidate side.
My pet peeves for
For a candidate.
On the interview side.
Yeah. And it could be, you know what, I would even go to the point of resume, I would go to submitting. I mean, I have my own answer, but I'm gonna let you answer this one.
Yeah. So, okay. Pet peeve, candidate side, from a recruiter, are emails. The names and types of emails that I see are inappropriate when looking for a job. Big Mama does surf.com, or or just
Email addresses.
yeah,
Yes.
The email addresses throw me off, because it's not that I have a little bit of room for everything, and a lot of time in the infancy of my career, I used to say, I live in the gray, I live in the gray, I live in the gray. But it's my role to then lobby on your behalf and present you to my management team, and prevent them from imparting upon you some ideal of what they think you might be doing or who they think you might be prior to you getting in front of them. And it is difficult to do that when there's email addresses that are just personalized. So personalized email addresses are one of my pet peeves. On the flip side of that, I do a lot of coaching as a result. So I spend a lot of time coaching candidates on how to bring their resumes up to par so that I can even move forward with the process. And when you have 200, like right now I think I have 350 applicants to review before Tuesday of next week. So when you're going through applicant flow like that, and you have to spend time coaching people on how to organize their resumes, the email addresses are huge. So that's one. Resume format is another, but I have a little bit of room for that. I really don't mind the coaching piece, because a lot of people, you just don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can put too much information, sometimes you can personalize too much, sometimes you can leave out things that you really should have in there. But essentially, the whole idea of, oh, your resume needs to be just one page. Well, that's not necessarily true. Your resume needs to tell the story, is what it needs to do. It needs to tell a story, because I'm going through resumes, like I said, and I need to be able to say, oh, this person has started here, done this, interested in that, would fit into the culture. Most organizations show you how to do the job. We have policies, process, and procedure in the healthcare space on how we want you to do the work. So if you're competent enough to do the work, that's fine. Are you going to fit into the fiber of the organization, and will the culture be a fit for you, is the next question. So those are, so the resumes, the pet peeves, perfume.
Heard this one. It's surprisingly, I've heard this one. I think I know where you're going, but I've heard this one.
Perfume in any interview is a no-no. And I only say this because you never know who you're interviewing with and what kind of allergies they may have. It could be a small room. It could be what you might think is flowers and blossom, and it could be off-putting to someone else. So it's just, it's just good to come clean without a lot of fragrance. That's another thing. In the healthcare space, business casual is always acceptable, whether you're going for food services or clinical lab scientists or marketing or otherwise. Business casual, or even coming into the onboarding process, the new employee orientation, that's another thing. And then lastly, I have a door-to-floor philosophy. From the time that you hit the door to the time that you are hired, you are interviewing. Okay? And with the social media doorway now, managers, coworkers, they look at your social media sites. So content matters. Mm-hmm. Nothing's private, so to speak. So content matters, and know that when you put yourself out there in a job search, and you're opening yourself up to folks kind of looking at every aspect of your person, because that's just the environment that we're in right now. So those things matter. Those pictures on your pages, or lock them down, if nothing else, or create a separate profile if you need to. But just be mindful, because the managers may not do it, but trust me, the employees of these groups that you'll be coming on board and have to work side by side, they're doing it, and they call the recruiters, and they have they have their 2 cents, even though they're not on the interviewing panel, but they definitely have their 2 cents. So I would definitely be mindful of that.
Remy, I have a question for you about interviewing and interview questions. So us as recruiters, we have signature questions that we ask people that we know is going to get and elicit the best out, to get the best out, and be like probing questions. It's going to be a question that's going to get a full answer. What would be one of your probing questions that you typically ask? What's your go-to question?
That's a really thoughtful question. I would say, obviously, there's a question about, you obviously always want to start with diving deep into the person's experiences and all that stuff, the technical aspect of it. But I would say that sometimes a good question, that just to understand the person, because at the end of the day, we all spend about 60 to 75% of our time at work. Mm-hmm. So for me, really knowing the person is really key. So I ask questions like, what do you do for fun? Or how do you spend your free time when you're not at work? And it's really important to get to know the person, because people really bring themselves to work and all that's going on in their lives. So I like that question quite a bit. It's like, what do you do for fun, or what do you do in your free time, to really, again, get to know the person.
Okay. So you work for LinkedIn. So one of the questions I have here on deck is to ask about which platforms people should use to get themselves out there. And obviously I will actually advocate already and say LinkedIn is one of them. And I'm sure you agree. Don't say you don't. What are some other platforms that you feel that people should be getting on so they can get themselves out there? And if you could start, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, so before I answer that question, there's one comment that I also want to make because I also think that this is really important. So in addition to all of this, I also really think that for folks on this journey and as you're thinking about your career, is really important to also find ways to give your time. That's also another method in which you build network, you build relationships, and all of you here in San Francisco, there is so much to do here in terms of like community, like Mid-Market Matters, the Glide Memorial Center. There's so much to do, and that's also another way to build your network is giving. You know, when you give, I truly believe you also receive in turn. So I want to make sure I add that. But you asked, let me answer your specific question on the journey on platforms. So from a product perspective, didn't know I was going to do a product demo, but I'm ready for you. So if you have your LinkedIn mobile app, you could just get it out really quickly and we could all network really fast. And the way to do it, there's something within here, your app, you open up the app, there's something called My Network. My Network will pop up. There is a person and a plus sign to the bottom right. You click it, and you should see something that says nearby, right? And that will find everyone that's near you. So a perfect way to connect, right? It'll pick up everybody around you. And that's a good conversation starter. I found you. So I found Bruno, I found Solani, and I found Alkesh. So that's a great tool and feature on LinkedIn app, real-time demo. And obviously beyond LinkedIn, there are many others, right? Many other platforms. It's really whatever you're comfortable using. There are a ton, right? There are many career sites. Right? And also, I would say, obviously, LinkedIn is one of them, but look up all the others. I also think, that some of the social media that are not professional sites, that's also a great way, but you have to be thoughtful about how you use it, right? You just have to be really thoughtful what you put on those sites to really, again, express who you are and what you're trying to, what message are you trying to put out there, right? There is obviously, for some folks still use Blogger, if you want to write something, some of the technical folks, again, you use GitHub, great, fantastic. Medium, if you want to write a white paper on Medium about a body of work that you're doing and essentially publish that on one of any of these platforms. Those are all, I would say, also really good places to, so there's the LinkedIn, there's the, kind of various different social medias that you could use. So those are some of the others that I have. I gave.
Anyone else? Yeah. Does anyone else have any feedback on
where do you guys
places to go and host?
We use LinkedIn. We found really great success. And as Craigslist, we've actually received a lot. That's still our number one job finder is Craigslist, believe it or not. So, yeah. So that's.
Don't sleep on that.
Yeah. So people are like, really? You found it on Craigslist? No, it's still our number one source to get applicants. But we use LinkedIn. We've gotten great candidates from LinkedIn. My one advice is make it professional. Let's not keep it like Facebook. There's been a couple posts. I'm like, oh, it's getting too Facebooky, but so keep Facebook for Facebook, LinkedIn for LinkedIn. But yeah, I would say LinkedIn and Craigslist are our two main, and then Glassdoor as well. We're also on Glassdoor, and that's a great way because they, again, you're getting a candidate that's researched the company and genuinely wants to be in the organization versus someone who's just sending out blanket resumes. And so when we hear oh, I saw your information on Glassdoor and I really like this, we know that our cultures might be a good fit for them.
We have used Craigslist, and I think sometimes as recruiters, we also have to be really aware of not assuming, oh, this tool, this platform may not work for us. So for our investments in capital markets, we typically are going to post in very specific spaces that are, they're groups that are put together. So we do use like select leaders. So that's going to be very specific to the investments and in real estate. And we find great success there. In fact, an overwhelming amount of success there. I'm guilty, I made the same assumption. Because we do have many different components and verticals within our company. One of the biggest deals this year was to double our maintenance team from 10 going to 30, which is a big deal for a company of 200. And I had tried Craigslist, I tried Indeed, I went to Glassdoor, we were, sourcing people off of the streets, and I went to LinkedIn, and believe it or not, technicians, they're plumbers, and what's happened is with the changes in technology, people from every different industry is on LinkedIn. And so surprisingly, when we ended up hiring like 3 or 4, we just continued. And so we did find quite a few of those folks on there. So it's various different platforms that we do use. We did have to resort to the old school where we actually went and made cards for our technicians. And as they were working and they're out there working with vendors and they were at Kohl's Hardware and they were here and there, we had a referral bonus program, $2,000, and they were out there handing it out. And we ended up getting about 8 of the first 10 hires that way. So it's not only technology, so we have to be careful. Like, technology is great, but there's something about, being creative and then keeping an open mind that it's not always going to come from LinkedIn. It's not always going to come from Glassdoor. It could be your neighbor. It could be a stranger again. So, yeah.
So I'd like to leverage from that comment because I agree 100%. First, there's a 3-prong approach that we typically take in looking to hire our positions. We first start off with employee referral bonuses. Yeah. So we want to get the referrals from employees because they already know what it's like to work at Stanford. They already know what the culture is. They already know what the expectation is and what the management style is. So what better platform to have than the platform of your own employees. So going back to what Remy said in terms of your personal network is probably just as valuable as any of these tools. So attending events, true, but if you know or if you want to connect with anyone, you may want to connect with the employees of the individuals that work at the companies that you're looking to target. And then cross-reference that with the information that you hopefully will take the next step in research on Glassdoor. We post on Glassdoor. We cross-post through Indeed. We post on LinkedIn for some things, not for everything, but for a lot of things. And then we have a healthy employee referral bonus program. And then once that person comes in, then we try to leverage that new hiring coming in and getting them to bring their friends and their friends and their friends. Because again, back to a lot of what's been said here, the takeaway and the theme is the relationships. We're GGU alumni. We're here. So it's about the relationships. It is about your personal brand and the tools that you leverage and utilize to build your brand. And then as you build your brand, how you market that brand and how you kind of sprinkle that brand throughout the industry as you watch the ebbs and flows of the industry is what gets you in. A lot of the positions that I've received is because someone, I put it out there to my network that I was looking, and then I applied and sent my resume to the black hole and had that whole experience and stuff like that. But it was the other recruiters that I knew that worked at the companies that I wanted to work at, or had someone that I could see through LinkedIn that worked at a company, that's currently working with them, but they used to work over here, and I'm like, connect me with this person, and connect, so it is about being resourceful. It is about being strategic in your job search. So it is truly about being strategic in your life, really. Everything we do is strategic, whether it be work, whether it be education, socially, personally, professionally, for sure. So those are, so we cross post and we do those things, but that's what works, is leveraging your relationships and being very strategic about what you do. And then watch your brand, build your brand from now. You're building your brand now. You upload this information on your personal website saying you were here. You get the selfies in, you get the business cards, you do the internships. You make the most of those relationships when you're doing your internships. It's not just who you're interning with right here. It's all of the people that you're exposed to, because you have an opportunity to step foot inside of an organization that you typically, you're not an employee. You're there, just by chance, by loan. So you got to make the most of it. So you network, you talk to people. You just find the most innovative, non-aggressive way to approach people for the personal information that they hold that you want the key to, right?
So as we wind up, thank you for that, as we wind this open panel up, I want to just think about, you guys all think about like final thoughts. Out here we have a group of people, let's just imagine they are all looking for something, they're looking for a job, they're looking for the next career change. What is something that you can briefly give them as a final close for them to walk out here and take to the bank, if you will?
I know for me, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And if you don't get something the first go around, don't get discouraged. There's been many times where we've had two really great candidates and we went with candidate A versus B, but 2 months later, a position opened up and we hired candidate B. So don't get discouraged. Keep yourself, out there. Keep networking, and that's really all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
One thing I can add to that is know what you're looking for. So set parameters for yourself. And there was a question that you had asked earlier, what is your favorite, that open-ended question. And I ask people and they don't know the answer. What is your ideal situation? It's not where do you want to be in 5 years, but what are you looking to do? And as people answer that question and they say, oh, I love investments, I want to be in investments, and then they see an accounting job or property management, and then they switch up. So I think it's very important to set parameters for yourself. So if you're in information systems and you want to work in the technology field, look at those tech companies and spend the time reviewing and looking at those companies and really getting to know where they are, what they're doing, and what their plans are, and invest time in focusing on those companies. And then really looking at your future. So if I know I want to be in tax or accounting, well, if you're going to intern, make sure you're going with those firms. So you want to set those firm guidelines, and it's not saying don't apply everywhere else, but I think it's always best to, instead of just throwing your resume out there, oh, that job's in my field, it's in my field, focus on industries, locations, because all of those things are important. That first job that you're going to take on post-graduation, there needs to be a commitment there. So you want to make sure it's a place that you want to be. You want to make sure it's an industry and it's a location that you want to be at, and you have the opportunity to set those parameters now.
Thank you.
So I think that's important.
So, any other final thoughts down here at the bottom?
I would like to give you guys a pearl. So, because we're all GGU, right? I just want to get my foot in the door out of your vocabulary whenever you're speaking to any person of interest for hiring. I just want to get my foot in the door. I'll start anywhere. I'm really eager. Just take the foot in the door. Take that out, okay? Also, beef up your recommendations on your LinkedIn page. Get recommendations from people who have worked with you that can speak to your work ethic and your interest in your whatever your skill set is. Beef up your recommendations because we do look at those. And leverage your network. All right. So I'm hopeful that you all do those things, and then we'll continue to move on.
Thank you.
I got 3.
All right.
That, I think we've all probably talked about in some point, but wrote down in 3. I think relationships and authenticity absolutely matter. Giving your time is also very important. And curate your career story or narrative on any platform of your choosing. So those are the 3 I got.
All right. So we at this time, let's thank them for that, and then we're also going to do some Q&A. So let's thank them for those. Thank you. Pearls, if you will. So I'm going to open the floor up for you guys to ask some questions. So if you have questions for the panel, I see hands already. This is great. I know yours first, so I don't know how I'm going to do it, and I'll go back. I'll weave through. But if you have questions for the panel, please feel free to do so.
I have a question for Yvonne. She said that if you have an interest in a specific industry, try that out. What if I'm at a very early stage? What if I am not sure what industry I am interested in? What is your suggestions on how to clear up my thoughts or how to go forward with if I'm not sure what industry I'm looking for? I'm sorry.
I would say think about and it goes back to that. Where do you see yourself? Like, we all know and have a vision of where we want to be. And so, for example, I knew I wanted to be in recruitment. I didn't think it would be in the public sector. I actually was in the military, and I focused on recruitment. And then when I got out, I kind of fell back into it because it was a different type of recruitment, but I knew that I wanted to work with people. I knew that I wanted to impact lives. So as I was growing up, I thought, oh, healthcare, oh, this, oh, recruitment, hospital. But you kind of just, you have to know who you are and what are the things that drive you. And as recruiters and in talent acquisition, those are things that are really important with AI right now. You have to understand, and maybe taking like a DISC profile, it's like a 15-minute assessment where you can understand what drives you as an individual. And scientifically, we have 4 drives, everyone. And so if your drive is driven by people interaction, then you should pursue a career. And it doesn't have to be industry specific yet, but think about a career that would allow you the opportunity to work with people. So maybe being an analyst behind the desk in an HR department, analyzing numbers and doing headcount reports, maybe wouldn't work for you, but maybe recruitment would. Teaching versus being, a back office secretary. You have to know who you are, and you have to discover that, and then take that, and then start to build those parameters. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. So you had a question. I'm going to bob that way because I remember you had your hand up, and then we'll go here.
Yeah.
I might have to repeat. Go
I
ahead.
actually have 2 questions. First is, it's open to everybody actually. Yeah. So first is in the pre-screening, it's about resume. Apart from keywords, what are the things that you guys look for, that recruiters look for, that stand out in a resume specifically, not on the LinkedIn profile?
You guys heard that? So what are the things you look at in pre-screening a resume?
Yeah.
Anyone?
For me, it depends on the job. So when I'm supporting the clinical practice, let me take imaging. When I'm supporting positions for the imaging practice, for example, in imaging, you really need to have a good understanding of the different scanners of the different machines, and so. Knowing all of the different technology and machines that the sonographer has worked on, for example, up front. So it's like positioning of information. Every recruiter is different. Okay, so different recruiters have different styles and personalities. For me, I like to see the story, so I read top down. I look for, the content knowledge, right, the expertise first. I look for internships or work experience next. I look for what school they've gone to somewhere down at the bottom in references. I kind of read that way. And it really does depend on the specifications of the job. See, on the back end, we sit down with the managers and we do what's called an intake process. In an intake process, you identify what the job is, what it takes to do the role, whatever technology tools support that, and then the personality type of the individual that you're looking for. So it really kind of does depend. I'm of the school of thought that sometimes when you start personalizing your resumes for each and every position you apply to, you end up with a lot of different profiles that are contradictory. And in a healthcare space, compliance is huge. So if we see any variations, then that is considered just a discrepancy, and it could disqualify you in certain cases. And it's hard because you're sending out resumes by the droves. So there's no right or wrong way, really. It's just being very succinct in your information. Essentially, where have you worked, the time that you've worked there, talk about the body of, the scope of the position and maybe some accomplishments. What have you done and what have you accomplished while you were there? If you have nothing but internship opportunities, that's fine. Talk about who you've interned with, the time period for which you've interned, and then the scope of work, the body of work, if it's for healthcare. So if it's patient facing, you work with different patients with different diseases and different, on different technologies, on different tools. So you kind of speak to what it is you actually did versus reading from just putting out bullets from the job description on your resume. We recognize that really quickly. Like I could look at a resume and see, okay, they just kind of grabbed some bullets and put it here. No, personalize it. Speak to what you've actually done, what you've gotten out of it, and then what made you shine in terms of standing out. What are some of your accomplishments, even if it's just one or two things? Right? And even if it's what you feel is an accomplishment that you might not have been recognized for. Because when you get into the interview, you have to speak to that, remember?
Yeah.
And the interview needs to be a conversation. It should not be robotic. The interviews that you get, the jobs that you get, you'll find it's because you've had a conversation with a panel or the individuals on the other end. Not because you've gone through 1 through 5 questions and you sort of answered and they've rated them and things like that. But essentially, the ones that really stand out are the ones that can kind of speak to this paper and bring it to life.
So we had another question. Remy. Okay.
Just wanted to add from a technology perspective. I'd say our technology obviously is powered by AI, so it actually makes the jobs of the recruiters easier. So what they can search for now, rather than just like with pure eyes looking at your resume, is they can skill search, they can title search, they can keyword search, and that'll give them a list of people to essentially send emails to. So for all of you, if you want to receive more contacts, right, think about what job you're trying to get and ensure that your profile is fully reflective, right? So if you are if you're interested in technical program management or product management, you want to ensure that you mention things that connect to that discipline, right? So if you're a software engineer, probably want to make sure that the skills are relevant. So whether you're a Java person, a C++ person, you write in Python or Ruby on Rails, whatever your skills, you want to make sure, obviously those are truthful, and it's reflected on the profile so that the recruiter, it'll just pull up in their search.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I
And you
have
had a second
thing.
question. But yeah.
Sorry, this is specifically for international students because I'm an international student. So how is market today from H1B standpoint? Is the rejection rates are high if we do not have H1B today? Because I think a lot of people here are STEM programs, so we would have OPT after our course, but how is market receptive? How are employers receptive to non-H1B candidates today?
Should I start? Yeah. So I think that the market is still fairly healthy, right? I think what you're mentioning is obviously the political climate impacting H-1B sponsorship.
Yeah.
I will say it is different today. However, the good news is for students, especially students in STEM, you have the OPT and the OPT extension.
Yeah.
So the OPT itself gives you a year, plus the extension could grant you 2 to maybe 3 years, giving you the opportunity, if you're able to get an opportunity where you're hired on an OPT, the company potentially has 2 to 3 tries to attempt to sponsor you. Right? So there is obviously a chance. It's a gamble. There's no guarantee. But obviously, it's still a market where folks in STEM background are still highly sought after. So the importance of H-1B has not gone, granting H-1B have not gone away.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good question. So Andrew's here.
So my question is kind of a personal challenge and it's real for a lot of people. So for someone like me who started in a startup or a small company, we might have to, work, might be a project manager, but we wear multiple hats throughout the whole career that you're there. If sales is having a problem, you go and help out there. If HR needs trouble. So what I felt is people who work in startups are very technically savvy a lot, but when I send an application for an interview, for an opportunity, as opposed to someone who has an Accenture or a Microsoft to back them up, they look smarter on paper. They might not get the hire, but they look smarter on paper. That's picked up. So that has happened to me, so I want to know, does such a bias exist? And if there is, how do I navigate through that?
I actually recruit a lot of project managers who have coming from that same space. I think for me specifically, because we are a specific industry, we look for very specific skills. And so when I'm looking, I always go to the gray area, because someone may have a project manager title in a small startup, or they may have a highly inflated title of senior and they've got 2 years of experience. So I have learned over the course of my career that it's really important that I look at the content versus only skill sets or only company names. So I have currently am looking for project managers, but it's so specific. They have to come from real estate. They have to come from multifamily. And so we look at all of the content for that. And especially in this market, I don't think that would be something to be concerned about. There are more jobs than there are candidates, and so if someone is screening you out, just based on that, may not be an organization that you would want to work for. And that would just be my thought, because what we do is we aim, our job is we work for all of these different managers within the company, so they become our clients, although they're our coworkers and colleagues. And so our job is to supply them the best candidate. Now there can be challenges, but a good recruiter would step in and say, I've met this candidate, I know her experience looks limited, and I know she's coming from a smaller organization, but let me tell you about my findings during the interview. These are some of the things that she's done. Here's where she excels. And so we're going to bring that relevant experience, and then the managers will sometimes say no, and great recruiters push. We will push for the manager to have an open mind about that, but over time your managers do trust you. And so when we are going outside of the box, if you will, we, again, relationships matter. So not only are we telling you to network, the relationships that we have with our internal teams as well.
Can I make a quick comment about that? So the competition is very real. What you experienced is not uncommon. That does happen. There's different recruiters of different types. I think I mentioned I have 350 applicant profiles to look through. I'm not going to speak to every person. So all I have is the paper for now. So it may be worth just positioning and calling out before someone else puts you in that position. You know, something to the effect of, you know, have spent X amount of time in startup companies doing various things. Project managed on X, Y, and Z. Worked on this. Again, talking about like pulling out the pearls. Pulling out the things that you've done and highlighting those things. So you're essentially putting it out there that I've been in the startup environment, but in this startup environment, I've worked on HR projects, I've worked in here, I've worked there, so I have a level of expertise. I have a consultative level. So consultants know a little bit about everything, but not an expert in one particular thing, is what the old consultant titles used to be. I don't know, it's not that anymore, but that's what it was in 2000. But you may want to kind of put it out there and just restructure just your, maybe the summary portion of your resume, or just your introductory, not cover letter. Because cover letters are cumbersome to the process for recruiters. They don't oftentimes get looked at.
Right.
I will tell everybody that.
350 candidates.
It's
very
so
difficult.
And it depends on the organization, size of organization, and the ability and the bandwidth to manage candidates looks different for each company. But if you're looking at positions that Accenture are involved in, then you're looking at the big consulting firms and stuff like that. So call it out before somebody else has an opportunity to do so, and that might help you leverage a little bit differently. But be okay, because it doesn't sound like that company was for you anyway. And competition is thick, so this is the you develop a thick skin during the interview process. So and leverage internships while you're a student. please take advantage of the fact that you can do internships. You know, that your bread and butter is not based on one job. Go and intern in different industries to get different exposures and experiences to figure out what you want to do if you don't know it already.
Really quickly, I'm starting to take so much time. The other thing that I will say is sometimes it's just not the right fit. So sometimes I'm looking for a very specific type of investment analyst or an asset manager, and they have to come from a certain space. And maybe that someone's done investments in another company, but not in real estate. So it doesn't mean that they're not good, but they wouldn't transition well into this particular job with the requirements, and they wouldn't be successful. So that could also be a part of it too. And I would say just continue to keep looking, and the right job will come.
Thank you. So what we're gonna do is we have our panel that's still gonna be here. I'm hoping they have some more time to actually be here so you guys can come up and ask them questions. But we're gonna wrap up, so if you guys would, let's give them all a round of applause to share.